Today we're going to learn how to create a drop-down menu inside a website. So as you guys can see in front of me here, I have a very basic website with nothing special inside of it, except for navigation at the top here. So today we're going to learn how to create this drop-down effect when we do actually hover our cursor on top of a menu item. Now the way we're going to accomplish this is only using HTML and CSS. So we're not going to use JavaScript or jQuery, just HTML and CSS. So what we're going to do to start with is I do actually have a couple images inside my website. If you guys want to use the images, you don't have to. You can go ahead and download them inside the description of this video. The images I'm talking about is the background image I have here and the arrow that I'm using right next to my drop-down menu. So if you guys want to have some kind of indicator that this is a drop-down, then I recommend you guys do some kind of icon that shows this is a drop-down. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go inside our text editor. And inside the text editor, we're going to go ahead and open up a new document. I'm going to go ahead and save it inside my root folder, which I have right here. As you guys can see, I do actually have an image folder in here with the two images in it. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this file as index.html. Then after doing this, I'm going to open up a new document. I'm going to save this one as style.css. So now we have a style sheet and we have an index page that has the navigation inside of it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back inside my index.html file. I'm going to go ahead and open up all the basic HTML tags that we need to have inside a website. I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in for you guys. There we go. Now, the first thing we need to include inside this file is a link to the style sheet. Now we will actually be styling the navigation in this episode because we need to have CSS included if we want to have this drop-down effect. So underneath my title tag inside my head tag, I'm going to go ahead and create a link to the style sheet. Now you guys should know how to do this by now, so I'm just going to go ahead and include it really quickly here. Style.css, like so. And then inside the body tag, I'm going to go ahead and create my navigation. So the first thing we need to have is the actual navigation or the container for the navigation. So I'm going to say we have a HTML5 nav tag, and inside this nav tag we have an unordered list because we need to have the navigation inside something. So the way we do that is by creating an unordered list. Inside the unordered list, we're going to go ahead and create a list item. Inside the list item, we're going to go ahead and create a link. Now when it comes to dropdowns inside a website, we need to make sure that the link inside the dropdown only has a hashtag inside the hyperreference. So if I were to say this one is going to be the drop-down menu, then we're going to go ahead and say we have a hashtag. Because when we do this, if the user were to actually click on the menu, then we don't get any kind of errors when we do actually get taken to whatever menu they clicked on. So we need to make sure we have a hashtag inside the hyperreference. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this a couple of times and paste it in. Like so. Let's say we have 4 links inside the navigation. I'm going to go ahead and call the first one home. The second one is going to be portfolio. Let's say I'm actually making a portfolio website. The third one is going to be about me. And the last one is going to be contact. Again, we don't actually need these, I'm just including them because we need to have some kind of navigation so I can actually show you guys the full effect of the dropdown. So after including this, we can go ahead and include some kind of logo perhaps right before the navigation. Again, I want to do something that looks kind of like this one, the example I showed you guys. And I did actually include a website name right before the navigation. So I'm going to go ahead and include that as well here. Again, you don't have to actually make this drop down. I just want to make sure it looks nice. So right before the unordered list, I'm going to say we have a p tag and we have something like p travels, like the one I showed you guys inside the website. This is something I just made up. And what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're going to go ahead and from now on focus on creating the drop down. So the way we accomplish a drop down is by going inside the menu item, one of these down here, that we want to have a drop down in. And right before we close off the list item, after the anchor tag, I'm going to go ahead and move down to the next line. Then inside the list item, I'm going to go ahead and create another unordered list. Now, some people will tell you that you can also do this using div tags or a button tag or something else inside HTML. I'm going to go ahead and use an unordered list to accomplish this drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have another unordered list, move it down, make sure we have some kind of hierarchy. So I'm just going to move it out so it looks nice. And inside this unordered list, I'm going to go ahead and create another anchor tag. So now that we have this, I can actually go ahead and say we need to have some text inside the first link here. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have digital art, perhaps. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this a couple of times, maybe 2 more times, and say that the second one is going to be video production. And the third one could be web development. Like so. So now that we have this, we can actually go ahead and just fill out the hyperreferences with hashtags. Again, the menus that you do actually want to link somewhere, you need to actually include a link to. So for example, the home link up here in the top, I'm going to go ahead and say index.html because it needs to take us to the front page, but you need to make sure that the one that you do actually include the drop down in, like the one in portfolio, you do need to include a hashtag, okay? All the other ones down here, you don't need to include hashtags because you need to link somewhere inside the website, okay? So now that we have this, we can actually go ahead and style our navigation. Let's actually go ahead and check it out first. I'm going to go ahead and say we have the index page. I'm going to open it up inside my Google Chrome browser. And as you guys can see, now we have a very basic website. Let me actually zoom in for you guys so you can see it. Now, what you guys will notice is that we do get the drop down, but it doesn't hide, because we haven't actually hovered on it. So we need to make sure that we can't see the drop down if we're not hovered inside the link that should actually show it. So we need to do that using CSS. So inside my style sheet, I'm going to go ahead and just do a couple of stylings here. I'm going to say we have, well, first of all, I need to get rid of the default margins inside the website. So I'm going to say margin and set it to 0. I'm going to remove the padding inside the website. I'm going to say 0 here as well. And then inside the body tag, I'm going to go ahead and link to the background image I included inside the lesson files. So I'm going to say body, like so. We're going to say background image. We're going to link to an image inside my image folder / and then it's called bg.jpg, like so. So now if we go inside the website, you guys will notice that we do get an image, but it's way too big. So we may actually go ahead and zoom out to 100%. So we need to make sure that the image actually fits inside the website. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this one a background size, like so. I'm going to call it cover, save it, and then you guys can see now we get something that looks a lot nicer. So now we need to style the actual navigation up here in the top of the website. So inside my style sheet, I'm going to go ahead and go underneath the body tag, and I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to style the nav tag. I'm going to give the navigation a width as 100%. I'm going to give it a height as 60 pixels and a background color as white, just to give it some kind of color, like so. And what you guys will notice is that now we get a white navigation. So now we need to style the content inside the navigation. The first one I'm going to style is the website name. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have a nav tag, and inside the nav tag we have a paragraph tag. I'm going to go ahead and say we have a font family set to Arial, just to have some kind of font. And we're going to set a color to #222. Then we're going to go ahead and set a font dash size to 22 pixels. We could actually say 24 pixels if you wanted to, that might be better. And I'm going to go ahead and set a line height to 55 pixels, like so. Let's actually go and check it out, like so. And now we're going to go ahead and set a float left because we need to make sure that the actual name of the website goes to the left side of the navigation. So inside my style sheet, we're going to say float left. And now we can start styling the actual navigation. So inside my nav tag, we're going to go ahead and say we have a unordered list, which right now should be floating left because we need to have it floating on the right side of the website name. So we need to say float left. Then afterwards, we need to style inside the navigation, inside the unordered list, inside the list item. Now I'm going to go ahead and set this one to a float left as well, because we need to have them next to each other. And I'm going to go ahead and say we have a list style set to none. just to make sure we have no bullet points after the list items. So we're going to refresh, and as you guys can see, now they're going next to each other. I can actually zoom in for you guys so you can actually see it. There we go. Now, before we start styling the text inside the navigation, I want to create some padding or some distance between the website name over here on the left side and the right side to get some distance from the navigation. So inside my style sheet, we're going to go up to the paragraph, and I'm going to go ahead and say we have a padding going 0 pixels from the top and bottom and 20 pixels from left and right, just to get some distance. So if we were to refresh, you guys can see we now get some distance. So now that we did this, we can actually start styling the text inside the navigation. So inside my style sheet, I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom here, and I'm going to go ahead and say we have a navigation, and inside of it we have a unordered list, which inside we have a list item, and inside the list item we have a anchor tag. So this is the one we're going to use when we want to style the text inside the navigation. I'm going to say we have we could actually go ahead and copy what we have inside the paragraph tag here, like so. Paste it in. Now I want to get rid of the line height as well because we don't actually need it. And instead, we're going to say padding. We're going to set it to, I'm guessing, 24 pixels to the top and bottom and 14 pixels to left and right. Let's actually go ahead and include a display block. And let's actually see how it looks like. So now it looks something like this. We need to actually change the font size because, having it the same as the website name doesn't make sense. So let's actually go ahead and change it back down to maybe 14 pixels and see how it looks like. There we go. Now I can see that the padding is a bit too much because when I do actually hover my mouse cursor, it activates a link after the navigation bar. So we need to actually decrease that amount to maybe 21 pixels. Refresh. And as you guys can see, that was a bit too much. So maybe we should say 22. And there we have it. So now we activate the navigation right before the navigation stops. The last thing I want to do about the text is I want to get rid of the text decoration, which is the underline that's under the text. So I'm going to go ahead and go back inside my style sheet, and inside my anchor tag, I'm going to say text dash decoration none. So now that we have this, we can actually go ahead and start styling the dropdown, because right now, as you guys can see, we have 1, 2, 3 dropdown items. And because we have these items, the rest of the navigation gets pushed over to the right side. So we have a huge amount of spacing in between them, which we don't want to do. So what I'm going to do here is to get this effect that allow for the navigation to ignore the dropdown until it's actually activated. We need to go inside the list item. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say we have a position set to relative, which allow for us to add a position absolute inside the sub items inside the navigation. Because if we don't have this position relative, then we can't activate the position absolute later. So we need to have it inside of it. So now that we have this one, we can actually go ahead and style the drop down by saying we have the same path here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy it. And inside, not the anchor tag, but inside the list item, we have a unordered list. And inside the styling, we're going to go ahead and keep display block and just remove everything else inside the styling, like so. Now what you guys will notice is that when I do actually include position absolute, we don't get this weird spacing in between the menu items. So when I refresh, you guys can see that now it's actually dropped downwards. So the next thing we need to do is actually include some kind of styling to the actual drop down. So the way we do that is by going back inside our style sheet and saying, well, we want to give this unordered list some kind of background color. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have a background color set to white. Now, if I were to go back inside my browser, you guys can now see that we have a white background instead of a transparent one. The next thing we need to do before we can actually include the hover effect is to decrease the spacing in between the menu items, as well as make sure we don't get the text on 2 lines. So as you guys can see right now, the video production and the web development has 2 words inside of it, which makes it jump down to the next line. So we need to get rid of that. So inside my style sheet, I'm going to go ahead and copy the last styling we did and just paste it underneath it, like so. And then I'm going to say we have a list item inside the unordered list, and we have a anchor tag. So we're basically just going to restyle the anchor tag inside the dropdown. Now I'm just going to go ahead and delete what we have here, and instead we're going to go up and see we have a padding right now as 22 pixels from top and bottom and 14 pixels from left and right. So I'm going to copy it, paste it in, and change it so we don't have 22 pixels from top and bottom, but instead perhaps 12 pixels. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the browser, and as you guys can see, now we have less spacing. We might need some more spacing though, so I'm just going to go ahead and say we have not 12, but perhaps 8. The next thing I want to do is I also want to include a hover effect so we can actually see when we do actually hover the cursor inside these drop-down items. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy what we have here, paste it down, say we have a hover effect by including the colon hover. And then inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and say we have a background color set to hashtag F3, 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 just to give it some kind of light gray color. So if I go back inside my website, refresh, you guys can see that now we do actually get this color here. Now we have a couple of issues though, because right now I need to decide if I want the gray background color. Well, let's actually change it to something else because you guys can't really see it, like so. I need to decide if I want the background color to go all the way from left to the right side of the drop down, or if I want some kind of padding on the sides of this drop down here. So I'm going to go ahead and include that because I want to have it inside my navigation here. So inside my code, I'm going to go ahead and go up to my unordered list, which is the drop down menu that we actually get when we hover the cursor. And I want to say we have a padding. I want to say we have a padding as 10 pixels, meaning that we get 10 pixels from top, bottom, left, and right inside the drop down. So if I refresh, you guys can see that when I do actually hover, we get some spacing between the walls of the navigation drop down. We could also change this to something else because right now 10 pixels might be quite a lot. So you guys can decide that for yourself. Now the next thing we need to fix is to make sure the words doesn't go on 2 lines, because we want to have one line that fits all the words inside of it. Now I just really quickly want to change this so we don't have a red background color, but instead have this light gray color again. So I'm just going to say F3, F3, F3. There we go. And now we need to make sure we can actually fit the text. So we want to make sure we style not the anchor tag, but the list item inside the drop down. And in here, we want to say that we have a width set to some kind of pixels. I could actually say 180 pixels just to make sure it can actually contain all the menu items text. So I'm going to save it, refresh the browser, and you guys can see that now we get a different width and we can actually fit all the text inside the drop down. So it looks a lot nicer now. The last thing I want to do about the styling before we activate the hover effect that allows for us to actually get the drop down is to make sure we have some rounded corners around the drop down. So let's actually go ahead and go back down inside the list item and say we have a border dash radius set to 4 pixels, like so. I'm going to copy it and paste it inside the unordered list we have here. But instead of 4 pixels everywhere, because if we were to just show you guys an extreme example here, you guys can see we also get rounded corners at the top, and we don't want to have that. So if we go back inside the styling, say we have 4 instead of 10, just to give you guys an extreme example, I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this 3 more times. So we do actually get one for each corner that we can style. So I'm going to take the first 2 ones, change to 0. And now if I go back, you guys can see that the top 2 corners don't have this border radius inside of it, but the bottom ones do actually have it. Now the last thing we need to do is include the hover effect inside the drop down. So right now, as you guys can see, the drop down is constantly showing. We don't want to have that. We want to actually hover the cursor inside portfolio and then it drops down. And we do that by giving our unordered list, the actual drop down, a display set to none. Then I want to say, well, when we do actually hover on top of this menu item we have inside the navigation, then we get a display block. So underneath the styling here, I'm just going to go ahead and copy everything from the unordered list and set the display to block. Then I want to delete everything else inside the styling, like so. And now I want to say, well, we need to actually activate the styling when we do hover inside the list item. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the last unordered list path and say we have colon, hover, space. And then I want to say, well, when we do actually hover inside the list item, Then I want to activate not the list item hover effect, but the unordered list inside this list item. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, refresh. And as you guys can see now, we do get this drop down inside the navigation. So this is how we can create a very basic drop down menu inside HTML and CSS without using JavaScript or jQuery. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.